Okay, so a little bit more about presets, because I know some of you guys photograph people. So I just want to go into the develop module and just show you our people masking, which is pretty crazy. So I have a picture, sorry it's of me, but I'm a very inexpensive and I signed the model release. So, you know, if there's one person in here, it'll find the one person. If there's two people, it would find two people, three people, four people, and it lines them up here. So you would see all the people that it can find in the image. Now, when you click on that, you can create a mask for the entire person, which is great if someone's backlit or something. You could use that to quickly lighten them. Or you can go in here and you can tell it exactly what you want it to create a mask for. No, there's no laughing. No laughing. Okay. You don't think I look good with red lipstick? And you can tell it whether or not you want to create these as separate masks. So this is really cool. So I can hit create masks, right? And it's going to create all these different masks for me. So if I go to mask 1, oh, by the way, it might not have shown two of them. We have two new ones. There's clothing and also facial hair. But I just can't seem to grow my beard strong enough for it to pick it up. So mask 1 is the facial skin, right? So I might come in here and just say, all right, well, let's just decrease the texture a little bit here. Oh gosh, those are my good glasses. All right, so I'm going to decrease the texture a little bit in the face, but then look at mask 2 is going to be other body skin, which is kind of cool because I can not only remove a little texture, but let's say, for example, in this image, I might also want to just take down my exposure a little bit, right? Just to kind of hide that neck a little bit. So that's why they're separate as far as body parts go. Then mask 3, we've got eyebrows. Look, I don't know what to do with my eyebrows, so I'm just going to delete that. Like, I don't do anything to my eyebrows. It doesn't trim them, so forget it. All right, then mask 4 is going to be, well, I could zoom in here, couldn't I? Let's go ahead and zoom in. Yep, that's not me after a horrible night. That is just the little bit of the overlay. So I can go ahead and just say, all right, let's go ahead and just bring that exposure up a little bit. Not weird, just a little better night's sleep. All right. Mask 5, what is that? That's going to be your eyes, the iris and the pupil. And usually I take up the exposure a little bit, but then if you want to add some kind of cool contrast, you can also take down dehaze. Oops, take it down. And then that will bring the blacks down. And it does a little bit better job than contrast. Contrast for me seems to make everything a little bit too light, but you know, it's completely personal preference. I mean, you could add color there, right? Like I could say, oh no, I want a different color eye, whatever you want. All right. And then what else do we have? Mask 6, that's the lips. Again, I'm just horrible at this, so maybe a little, I don't know, change the, whatever. A little exposure. Okay, there we go, that's great. Teeth, yeah, terrific. Maybe a little bit of desaturation. All right, and then this mask, this is gonna be my hair mask. Great, let's push me to really gray. Let's go to no more saturation. Get that yellow out of there. And maybe a little brighter. Okay, so maybe you like it a little brighter, but it's getting this area and this area too bright. So don't worry, you can always go in and add and subtract or intersect, right? So if I want to subtract a little area, I can grab my brush, maybe set the flow down a little bit, and let's get a little bit bigger of a feather on there, and just come in here and say, you know, just don't affect that area too much because my hair is a little thin right there, okay? And then mask 9, there's my clothing. So what do we want to do? You know, do you want to brighten it up, darken it down, whatever? I don't probably want to draw any more attention to it because the attention should be on the face. But here's where it gets really cool. Okay, so I've made this mask. I don't want to ever do that again. Now, what I would probably do is just set normal settings for them, which for me, this is pretty normal. This wasn't too crazy. But what we can do, did you show them how to make a preset? Oh, okay, so here we go. So not only can I copy and paste this, I can also make a preset out of it. So let's make a preset first. So when I go to the plus icon and I say create preset, well, what I should do is I should name the masks, right? So face, other, skin. So when you create your preset and you come in here, see how by naming that mask, see, you'll only have to do it this once and you'll never have to do it again because you'll make a preset for this, okay? You'll do this, this is auto correct portrait, all right? Aut, that's how we spell it in the States. We don't like to use many vowels, okay. Oh, that's how we spell portrait too. Oh, just forget it. Okay, I'm gonna go here, I'm gonna make a new group and this will be trash me, please. All right, because you can't spell. So what do I include? Well, it depends. It really depends. There's kind of two theories about this. Some people, they save like everything, right? Or they save like multiple things. So you might save like a conversion to black and white plus a sepia tone plus a vignette. All right, so that they can do one click and boom, they get all three of those things. In this case, because it is a person and because I rarely photograph people, so they're kind of all over the map when I do photograph them, I'd probably save my masking separate. Because I would probably need to go in, and I don't do people in studios, so I would need to do a lot of other exposure, shadows, highlights and stuff. So I probably wouldn't include that in this case, but I might click, yes, please, all of those masks. So you see how nice it would have been if I named all of them, took the time to name them once, okay? So all I'm gonna do is hit create. I'm going to support the amount slider, definitely. Don't let me forget, I wanna talk about that. And I just hit create. So here is my little trash me. So I can go to my next image, which, yeah, it's still me, but the crop's different, my hair's different, my smile's different. And instead of having to go over here and grab the person and then click each one of the masks and then have those masks load up and then rename those masks, I can just go over here and say, trash me please, and it should have, oh, sorry, that's the folder name. I can just go here and select the preset and it will apply all of those masks for me. It's crazy. Like wedding and portrait photographers can now have dinner with their families. It's quite nice, all right? The other thing you could do if you had a bunch of images that you wanted, oh, I said the amount slider, remember? If it's too much for this image, we can just back off a little, or you can amplify the amount of retouching. Back off, amplify, all right? So that's the amount slider, and it works for all presets. So if you find a preset that you like, but on one image it's just a little bit too much, just tone down the amount, okay? All right, I could also copy this, decide whatever it is that I want to copy. If there were more things, like if I had already gone through and I'd done some healing on me and masking, and maybe there was a post-crop vignette or whatever, I could copy all of those items, move to the next image, and then hit paste. And it would, used Command V, sorry, to hit paste. Maybe that didn't work. Paste, yes. Okay, so that's pasting, and it's going to the AI to say, hey, there was a mask that was select subject, let me find the subject, and then let me apply all of these masks. So it's up to you. You can create a preset, that's awesome. If you've just got like 5 or 6 images in a row that you want to apply the same effects, I would suggest you copy and paste. You can also just go to the next image and then hit previous, but that also includes cropping. So you may or may not want to use that because it would have the same crop adjustment as the previous image that you were working with. The other thing is you might need to go to some masks. You might want to label them, rename them like this might need to be altered because look at, with the clothing, no, that's fine. Sorry, it's the hair one, right? So it got my hair, but then remember I did that brush and it doesn't know. I mean, the brush is a manual thing that I painted, so it's not going to move it with my hair. It'll make the AI hair selection, but the manual brush, I might just need to go in there and say, oh, that needs to go up a little bit higher, or maybe even let's just delete that on this one. So we could just delete brush 1. Okay. Okay. I think we can skip those. The only thing I would say, well, this is just, I was playing around with presets. So, sometimes you don't really know where you want to take an image. So this was the original image. That was just a preset, and this is another preset. So we are shipping with a lot of presets now. The ones that are adaptive, they're in the adaptive folders. Those are the ones that have masks in them, that have the AI stuff. But you can come down here. I mean, if you like, if you're doing landscape, you might want to come in here and see which kind of presets. Like, oh, you might like that. You can always apply a preset and then change it, right? So when you apply a preset, all it's doing is changing either a profile or a checkbox or a slider. You can always go in and refine the preset, make it your own, and then save your own preset from whatever it is you've changed, okay? They're really pretty cool. I don't think you guys should have to buy presets. I think you guys should be able to make your own presets. They are fairly easy, okay? Okay. But they can take you into direct, like look at this image right here. Okay, if I go back to develop, look at some presets here. Let's go to cinematic. Like, I don't know anything about cinema, so let's see what these do. I don't like those very much. Let's try this one. Well, ooh, like that was kind of cool. I mean, it just depends on your personal style, right? That's kind of cool. 08, that's kind of cool. What about some sky? They've got some adaptive sky. Dark drama, ooh, neon tropics. Dark drama, okay, dark drama, but then let's fade it, right? And then you can go figure out what it's done over here, because look at each of the panels that has the eye white as opposed to gray. That means that something has been changed there. So I can click on any of these and go, oh, well, what was changed in lens correction? What was changed in detail? What was changed in color grading? Oh, that's how they made that preset. So you can just learn from going in, applying a preset, and then seeing what on your image has changed. Okay, back to grid for a minute. I want to talk a little bit about color, if that's okay with you guys. Because we have a lot of different options in Lightroom to change color. And people are always kind of asking me like, well, when do I use which tool for color? So I can start with this image right here. We can go to grid, develop. So this is just a Photoshop file, and I've put that gradient at the top so that we can take a look kind of in depth at color grading. But first, I'll just say, you know, if the color balance, I shouldn't say that, if the white balance in your image isn't right, go ahead and just use temperature and tint. Now you'll notice mine are set to 0. Why is that? Because why? It's a photo, oh no, the temperature and tint are set to 0 because this is a Photoshop file. If I go and select a raw file, then it's actually going to have the temperature in Kelvin and the tint here. But because this is either a PSD or a JPEG, it's a PSD. It's just 0 to 100, so the scale's a little different. But if I just wanted to change the color temperature, I would use the temperature and tint, all right? Or you can use the pull-down menu here. You see, it's very limited because, again, it's a PSD file. Or you can use the white balance eyedropper, okay? Then if you just want to pull out a little bit of color, like we can use saturation. In fact, let me go to this other image for a minute, just because it is a raw file. If I pull out all the saturation, I get what looks like a black and white image. It looks like grayscale, right? If I increase the saturation 100%, what happens is any colors in my image that were really saturated, like let's say this is the limit, this is the top limit of saturation, and I've got a bunch of colors that are near the top. They're really almost all saturated oranges, right? When I push the saturation to 100%, it slams all of those to 100%. Which means if I was seeing detail in my image based on a change of color, it's gone. Okay, it would smash it all to be in the same value, so you could actually lose detail. Vibrance doesn't do that. It's a biased slider. So when I move vibrance all the way over to the right, yes, things get vibrant, but it tries to keep the relationship between colors intact so that you still get that detail. Okay? It's also biased in that it's only taking out a percentage of the color that was already there. So you'll notice in this image, there's actually still some color, like in here. You can still see that because that was very, very full of color to begin with. So it's taking out a percentage of that. Okay. Of course, you can use them in conjunction with one another because one of the other things you'll notice with vibrance is that it tries to leave the yellows and reds in flesh tone alone. So if you have a portrait of someone in the landscape and you want to pop the blues and the greens, you might want to try increasing the vibrance instead of the saturation because it won't affect the skin tones as much. Okay? But they're pretty global, right? Those are pretty global tools. So if we just want to select a color range, like a range of colors in our images, that's when we go down to HSL, right? This is going to change the hue, saturation, and luminance of a color range of your reds, of your yellows, of your blues. So you're picking the color and then you can make all these changes. So there is also this color mode, which I see people work in. The only drawback of working with color is that you don't get this targeted adjustment tool. And this little targeted adjustment tool enables you to pick it up and then click on a color and move the tool up and down. And as you move the tool up and down, you're either going to increase or decrease the hue, increase or decrease the saturation or increase or decrease the luminosity. So if I come in here, maybe I want to go to the hue first, pick up my target adjustment tool, because I think this is orange, and I'm going to take it to the left. Oh, look at my sliders. It's not just orange, it's orange and red. So the other benefit of using the targeted adjustment tool, especially in skies, people are like, oh, I'm going to move the blue slider. Most of the time, it's not just blue. It's a combination of either blue and aqua or blue and purple. And you can actually get banding because you've only moved one of the color sliders and not the other. Okay? So I recommend the targeted adjustment tool. And then if you're just doing creative stuff, yeah, you don't have to. You could just come in here and see like, well, what would it look like if I move the orange to the left? What would it look like, you know, if I move this to the right? Maybe I want to increase that or something. It's really whatever you want to do. So I'm going to move these were the reds. I'm going to move them a little bit over to the oranges. And then let's just desaturate all the rest of this. Like, here's my doom and gloom. It's coming at you right here. Okay, because this is just, it's too springy and nice. Like, oh, it's all like happy and whoa. All right, so we go to saturation. I'm going to increase the saturation of the oranges a little bit. Yeah, that should be fine. And then again, like, yeah, desaturate, desaturate, desaturate. Oh, that's looking so much better. Look, it's fall. It's going to be winter soon. And in luminosity, what do we want to do? Well, maybe we want to darken those reds. Let's darken them down a little bit. I don't know how this is looking up there. This might be looking terrible up there, but no, it's all right. I think you guys get the idea of it. I'm darkening down those greens. Ooh, maybe the aquas. Okay, so you can do whatever you want, but the point is, what am I adjusting? A range of color. I'm adjusting a range of color. Okay, let's set that back. Okay, there's luminance, saturation, and hue. I'm just double clicking there and it sets it back. Okay, so now we're all cheery again. Color grading. Color grading is very different. You're adding color in your shadows, your midtones, or your highlights. You don't get to pick reds here. You can add red, but it's not going to add it to the color range. It's going to add it to your shadows, your midtones, or your highlights. Easiest way to see this is to take the image to grayscale. So I just tap the V key. V as in black and white. I don't know where we come up with some of these, okay? But anyway, so here we have, okay, I'm gonna start with the shadows, right? And we can just click anywhere in this little circle here. If you want the circles bigger, you don't have to have the all three at once. You can go in here and be like, no, I just wanna see my shadows, midtones, or highlights. But I'm gonna start with all three. So we can go ahead and use the outer dot. So I'm clicking on that outer dot, right? And that's going to change our hue. You can change the inner dot. Once you put something there, it constrains it so that when you move that, it's only changing the saturation. But if you move it far enough, like around the circle, it'll break that constraint and then you can add whatever color you want. So I'm just going to do something that's going to be really ugly. Sorry, but I'm going to add a lot of blue and then I'm going to add a lot of yellow, right? So we should be able to see that because I want to explain. I want to explain the difference between blending and balance. So balance, as I move this over to the left, we're going to see more blue, more of the shadow color. If you move it over to the right, you're going to see more of the highlight color, which is kind of this orange color. So that's the balance. It's like a teeter-totter between your shadows and your highlights. It's defining what is a shadow and what is a highlight. Okay? The blending is different. The blending is the crossover of the two colors. So if I have blue and I have yellow or orange, if I say the blending is nothing, there's barely any crossover. So the highlights will remain yellowy orange and the shadows will remain blue. The way to really see this is if we put a color in the center. Actually, the way to really see it is to look at a gradient. Okay, so I'll add my blue and then I'll add my yellow. We can see here, it goes from blue to yellow. All right, first, let's look at the balance. We'll go back to the balance, see how the blue, when I move it to the left, the blue goes up. When I move it to the right, the yellow goes down. So that's the balance, okay? The blending, if I take the blending off and we look here, blue really only goes to the midpoint and orange only goes to the midpoint. If I move the blending way over, we can see there's a nice blend of that, okay? But again, the way to really see it is to add a third color. So now I've got this green here, and we can see when I move the blending to the left, There's barely any blending here. It's a very short transition, very short amount of crossover. When I move the blending all the way to the right, we're barely going to, well, you can see that you're changing into yellow almost in here and this color here. All right, does that make sense? So it's the crossover of the color. All right, so it's almost like a bigger fade range, if you want to think of it that way. Okay, so let's go back to our happy little trees. Typically, I actually don't put color in my highlight very often. You can, it's just not my look. I think when I color grade an image, if I don't put a color in my highlight, it makes the image more believable. Because someone will look at the white and go, well, the white's pure white, so there must not be a color cast in this image. Whoa. You know, I'm like, yeah, there is a color cast, but watch. If I just double click to reset that, right? And now let's make kind of a sepia tone. If I add a little bit of red there and a little bit of yellow here, and then we just bring that way down and bring this way down. And it's looking pretty light. Can I just go to the basic panel for a minute and just maybe even an auto? That didn't really help, did it? Let's bring my highlights down a little more, shadows up, exposure down. There we go. How's that? Okay, that looks a little better. All right. So we've tackled two. We've tackled the HSL, which is a range of color. We've tackled color grading, which is adding color to your shadows, midtones, and highlights. What's another way to change color in Lightroom? Tone curve, exactly. Tone curve, right? And with your masking, with selection, absolutely. So the tone curve traditionally is used, for you can add contrast, subtract contrast. You add your points on the curve, and if you bring them down, it darkens it. If you bring it up, it lightens it. All right, I'm going to reset that. If you go into the red, green, or blue, you'll notice that there's a gradient in here. So this is much more like color balance. Okay. If I want to make the shadow areas, If I want to make the shadow areas more blue, I'll drag this up, okay? If I want to add more yellow, I'll drag it down, or more blue, go up towards the blue, okay? So it doesn't matter that I am not, well, maybe you could call this art. That's not the point right now. The point is the theory. Unlike HSL, where I can just say, I want to change this color, this one color range, or I want to desaturate this color, the tone curve works color balance. So if I want to add yellow, I have to think what's the opposite of yellow and subtract the other color. So you can't just take some color and take it out. Or you can't just take a color and make it lighter. You have to balance it with the other color. All right, if I reset that and I go into red, if I want to make it more red, we go up, more cyan, we go down. Right? Like you can't mess anything up in Lightroom. Like with any of these sliders, if you don't like it, just reset them. There's no loss whatsoever. Don't be afraid of any of these sliders. Yeah, especially when people are like, you must use it in this order or go home. It's like, oh my goodness, give me a break. Okay, so that was what I wanted to talk about color. I wanted to do a really short thing just with in the basic panel, just to talk about sharpening and presence. So I wanted to look at this little guy because he's so cute. Look at him. All right, we go to the develop module, and look at that. I got a cool modern 3 profile applied, but I don't have any texture, clarity, or dehaze. So I just want to talk a little bit about the 3 of these things. All 3 of them, they're all trickery. Right? So all 3 of these are adding contrast to your images. If you've ever used, or if you were ever in the darkroom and you created a contrast mask, or if you were ever in Photoshop and you used unsharp mask, same idea. What these tools do, I'll take texture specifically. Texture looks in your image and tries to find an edge. It's looking at what we call the high frequency areas. The small edges, the detailed edges, like around tree leaves, around this little guy's fur, okay? It's looking at the smallest detailed edges in your image. When it finds an edge, it makes one side of the edge darker, it makes the other side of the edge lighter. When it does that, it fools your eye into thinking that the image is sharper. because it has more contrast around the edge. So if I move this all the way to the right, it's a little too far, but look at, especially down here. Look what's going on with the, is it fur? Wool. Thank you. Sorry. I do not live on a farm. I live in Silicon Valley. All right. I don't photograph birds. Well, now I do. All right. So look at that. If I go the other way, it's going to soften it. So this could be nice for softening skin tones, all sorts of things like that, right? Just whatever look you're after. Okay, so we've got that kind of locked in. That's textured 100%. Clarity does the same thing, but when it adds the contrast, first of all, it's looking for edges, but not in your tiny, tiny details. So one step above that. And then when it adds the contrast, instead of just adding it to each side of the line really tight, it adds it to more pixels on either side. Okay, so when it finds a line, an edge, let's say it adds, you could add like the same amount between clarity and texture, but texture would be really tight to the edge, and clarity would be like, oh, well, I'm going to add, let's say 10. 10 contrast, 9 contrast, 8 contrast, 7 contrast, 6 contrast. So it would go out further. It's like the radius in the unsharp mask, but all you have to do is look. It's a very different effect. It's not working on those fine details in your image. It's one step up from that. So look at the difference. Have you ever gone to before and after view? It's this little YY. All the time, right? But is it, I don't know if any of you guys, some people think it's super annoying because what you look at in before is when you imported the image. And you're like, no, I want to view something else. I want to compare texture with clarity. Okay, so here's the thing. You can drag from any state in history into the before state. So I can drag my texture set to, well, where did I do my texture? I must have undid it with Command Z. But if I want to compare texture with clarity, well, let's just reset clarity, and I'll increase texture. So now we've got a texture over here, but I want clarity over here. So I want clarity of, gosh, plus 100, that's the one. All right, so now we can compare. The point that you were supposed to be wowed by was the fact that you can grab something from your history and drag it over there. Oh my gosh, Julieanne, that's so cool. Oh, you would have won a prize, but no one said it. Okay, all right. The other thing that clarity does is it does tend to decrease the vibrance a little bit on your image. So a lot of times I notice that after I apply clarity, do I get a prize? Thank you very much. No, I don't. He took it away. I do now. Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Well done. Okay. Dehaze. Dehaze, on the other hand, is going to move. Okay, watch my histogram for a second. When I move texture, it barely moves, right? When I move clarity, it moves a lot more. All right? So it's really working in the midtones of your images and throughout the entire histogram, but it doesn't move it very much. Dehaze was specifically designed to move everything in your midtones down into your shadows and your blacks. So if I go here, let's see if we can. All right, so dehaze, well, that'd be too much, but you could either soften it, right, or you can darken this down with dehaze. But it gets two things. It gets saturated, so I typically have to pull back on my saturation a little bit. Oh, that's why. I'm going to change the profile here. I was overreacting a bit. I'm going to decrease the saturation a bit. That can help. And then also, I might want to go in there, and if you're doing this, especially to clouds and stuff, look at how noisy it gets when you use dehaze. So you might want to come in here and just say, all right, well, let's come down, because all of the original noise reduction is also there. All right. So let's say, because you were asking earlier, when you apply denoise, let's say you'd worked on your file and then you apply the denoise, and so you get a separate file. You get a new file and it has all the same settings applied to it, right? But the denoise was applied first. Okay, so the denoise was applied to that DNG file, and then you have all of your other edits on top of it. But the denoise is the base level, and that's why you're getting the clean file. But you can always come back in, and like you were saying, you can add some grain, or you can come in here and say, you know what, I just want to take a little bit of this luminance noise out of this area here. And think about it, if you like had a sky and you used a linear gradient that had a lot of dehaze in it, You could then also decrease saturation, and it's a little bit strange. If you went to masking, so that is Shift W, will take you to masking, and you went in here and you said, okay, well, I'm going to go into my linear gradient, and I'm going to drag this down. That's going to be great, and then I'm going to increase my dehaze, or you could decrease it if you wanted it foggy, but if you increase it, you get a lot of noise, and you're getting some blue up there, and hopefully you can see that. Yeah, okay. So we come down here because it's adding more blue, but then if we zoom in, it's getting really noisy. So here's the thing, you'd come to detail, and people always go, well, I want to decrease the amount of noise, but it's noise reduction. It's not noise, it's noise reduction. So if you move it the other direction, it actually gets rid of the noise. I know. The thing is, we couldn't fit the word reduction in there. I know. And in German, it's even worse, because you know how long some of those words get. So it is noise reduction, but I almost, like 99% of the time when I add dehaze, I also desaturate, and I also increase the amount of noise reduction, because otherwise it just gets, yeah, you can tell, and then you can tell there's these clumps of noise in the sky, and then there's nothing in the foreground, so it can get really awkward. So let's just talk about collections for 1 second, because I find that people aren't really using them. I use them all the time, right? So my folders are just my folders. These are the folders on your hard drive. If you right click and you say show in Finder, sure enough, there's my folder 2014. Here's all the subfolders, right? Do not move your files behind Lightroom's back. I know you won't do that because it will lose the link to it. If you do it, you'll only do it once. If you say edit in and you go to an external editor, or you do a plugin and you go to the external editor, make sure that you leave Lightroom open, right? Because if you quit Lightroom and then you're off playing in this external editor and then you save the file and close it, Lightroom's like asleep. You've closed out of it. So Lightroom's not there to catch the pass, right? Because you've quit it. So keep Lightroom open so that when you're done editing in your external editor and you save it, it will automatically hand it back to Lightroom. That's the first thing. The second thing, if you start in your folder, it will end up in your folder. If you start in a collection, it should end up in a collection. I'm going to create a new collection. All right, you can create a collection set, that's just a folder, right? But I'm going to create a collection, and my collection is going to be called To Post on Social. All right, now, I don't want to include the selected photos. I don't want to sync with Lightroom yet, but I want to set this as my target collection. You don't have to do it when you make the collection. You can always set a collection as a target collection later. So I'll leave it off so I can show you how to do it as well. I'm also going to, at the very beginning, I'm going to put a whole bunch of spaces, and then I'm going to put and that way it'll go to the top, because the collections are alphabetical, right? So here it is, To Post on Social. So I've seen you guys do this, right? So you're like, okay, I just went to Bryce, so I'm going to grab this photo. I got it, okay. Okay, great. All right, now let's scroll up here. And then this one I want to post from here, from China. Okay, I want to grab that one. And I'm going to grab this one. Oh, wait, okay, collections are down here. Okay, there it is. Okay, and then let's scroll up here again, right? Because we want to go up here, and we want to get something from Antarctica. And then we're going to grab this, and then we're going to, oh God, this takes forever. Come on, scroll, right? Okay, that'll drive you crazy. So what you do is you right click, right? Or control click on Mac and say, set this as your target collection. Once you do that, it gets the little plus next to it. By default, your quick collection is the target collection, but we just said, no, I want this collection to be my target collection. So what that enables me to do is just tap the B key, B for target collection. And then it'll just go in that collection, right? So I only have 2 images in the collection, but watch how fast this is. Oh, Joshua Tree, oh, B, come down here, B, come down to Death Valley, oh, B, oh, I like that one, B, let's go here, B, oh, let's go to Red Rock, oh, that looks fabulous, B, but wait, B for but wait, there's more, okay? Pick up this little tool, this can of spray paint, this little painter tool, it's awesome. If you pick that up, you can set it to target collection. So now we're like, oh, I'm going to the Southwest. Oh, all these are so great. You can click on one. You don't have to select it and tap B. You can just come down here, clickety click, 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 and it will add. You can click and swipe. They're all added. Look at this. Look how fast that is. 27 images right there. All right? Okay, so clickety click click. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a whole bunch more. Select all, tap B. Why did I do that? Because now I have a bunch of images and I want to put these in a custom sort order. All right, so I think, let's put the tool back, okay? Okay, next to this image, what image do I want? Next to the flower image, the second image I want is this image. Okay. Okay, just next to that flower image. Oh, we're almost there. Almost there. Okay, you guys get the idea, right? You can go up to the top and it's fast. A little faster, maybe? Okay, there we go. All right, and whew, you drop it. Here's an easier way, right? Let's say I want two other images next to this. Go find the images, all right? You're like, oh, it's this one and this one. So I have them both selected. They're both targeted, right? Okay, right? You with me? Okay, they're selected. If I move up here, are they still selected? Yes. If I move up here, are they still selected? Yes. If I go all the way up here and I want to put them next to this, if I select this one as well, if I command click on that, now 3 of them are selected, right? If I move this to the right, see where it goes from a full outline to just a line? And I drop it, they come up there because they were selected. Wait, what? Yeah, I know. I want to take this image and I want to put it near the bottom. It's selected, and this one's selected. So I scroll down, and I say, oh, it should be next to this image. So I command click. I have 3 images selected now. Move it over to the right, and there they are. So much easier. The other thing, of course, that you can do is you can select all the images in a collection and go into survey view. Right? Survey view is awesome. You can just move them around. Super easy. Oh, I have to break those up, or those shouldn't be together. I want to go horizontal, vertical, whatever you want, right? Or maybe you're here and you're like, oh my gosh, I added too many of these and they're all so similar. Let's select them all and tap N and go to survey mode. If I just hit the X here, that just removes it from survey view. It's still in the collection, but now I could say, oh, okay, well, I can't have so many of these, so I don't like this one as much. So I can take it out of the collection by just tapping the delete key. So it's so easy to come in here and narrow down what it is that you're going to show in your collection, right? So I just deleted those out of the collection. They're all selected in grid view. You can move these over, okay? We have to do something in Photoshop. Come on, let's go to Photoshop. So if you're going to ask me when I use Photoshop, I will just quickly tell you when I use Lightroom and when I use Photoshop. Let's go up here to Australia, and let's come down here to when I use. Okay, so there's the original, there's Lightroom, so I do as much as I can, but if I have to do like that much retouching, I'm going to do it in Photoshop because it's faster for me. Same with this one. There's original, retouched in Lightroom, but then a little bit more retouching in Photoshop. Okay, same here. And people, like, it's not cheating. When you're looking at something, like I'm looking at this shape and I love it, but all that other stuff I don't need. And I wasn't looking at it. I wasn't looking at that little plant. So I have no issue. Like, I want to tell a story. I want people to see what I was looking at while I was there. And if that does not include all the information, I am a lens-based artist and I don't care. Okay, so here's original, Lightroom, Photoshop. Right? So again, retouching, all right? Same here, retouching. Easier to make the selection on this one in Photoshop. That's another reason I go to Photoshop. So retouching, easier to make a selection, because there's so many selection tools in Photoshop, right? There's a million of them. And then this one, there's Lightroom, but there's Photoshop. So this one I wanted to put in here because I want to encourage you to take the shot. Take the shot, even if there's a mountain in the background or something, because you can always remove it in Photoshop. I don't think it's cheating. And it makes it, look at, this makes it very cluttered, and it makes it look like, what's the relationship between ice and the mountain? There, nothing, it was far away. So I just removed it, okay? This, again, I mean, come on, you're in Antarctica. You think I'm looking at all that other stuff in the water? No, so I removed it. You know what you do? Here's what you do. See the clouds there? See how dark they are? You take one picture here and you go, whoa. You take a second picture shooting up at the clouds. Same direction of light, same quality of light. Now you have a cloud file and you've got your icebergs, and then all you have to do is put them together in Photoshop, right? You don't have to stretch the sky. It doesn't get all weird with the grain and everything. So think, when you're on location, if you're going to make a composite, what can you do to create a clean background? This is the same thing. Love that ice, hate the foreground. Like, it's all slushy. So half an hour later, still foggy, but the temperature changes and there's no more slush in the water. Just a few floating pieces of ice. Take the other picture, put it together, right? So now we have that nice calm foreground. Here we go. You got a tripod. You're in sand. You want to take a long exposure. You know it's not going to work because the wave's going to come up and your tripod's going to move. So just move your camera over a little bit, get a bunch of water. You've got your ice that you like, but I don't like all that rock. Put them together. Take another photograph of a clean background so that you don't have to sit there and retouch everything while you're in the location with the same lighting conditions. Same here, love this, but again, I love the piece of ice, but I can't go out there, I can't get to it because it would disturb the water. Take another photo, put them together. And it's not that hard. Oh, then there's me being weird. This was COVID. I called this everything is fine, yes? See, so I guess I have shot birds before, it's just they were on my scanner. I've taken another bird. That was called, I don't remember, Catastrophe, because they're carawongs and a bunch of carawongs is called a catastrophe. That's called Float, because everyone was having problems breathing, yeah. So, and then this was called I Didn't See It Coming. Yeah, so I also do those things. But just really quickly, let me just show you how easy it is when you start with files like these. If you can think like this out in the field, you could select this image and this image, okay? You could right-click, you could say Edit In, and what am I going to edit this? This is a new feature. Open as Smart Object Layers in Photoshop. Finally! It's awesome! Open as Smart Object Layers in Photoshop. For you who don't use Photoshop, what that means is Lightroom is going to hand off a copy of your RAW file. So it still has the original, you don't have to worry about that. It hands off a copy of all your RAW files and it places them into a single Photoshop document as full-on RAW files. So a Photoshop, like a PSD file or a TIFF file, can contain, think of it like a candy wrapper, it can contain different kinds of content, right? Candy wrappers, they can be chocolate, butterscotch. TIFF and PSD can have RAW files, pixel-based layers, type layers, the pen tool, all those things. So now I've got in a single document these two layers, right? So I know they're smart objects because they have this little icon right there, which means if I double click on it, it will open it up in Camera Raw. Camera Raw is the same technology that you have in Lightroom. Fantastic. So when I come here and I say, you know what, let's just get a little object selection going. So it's going to select the objects in my image. So I'll drag my little rectangle around this, making sure that I get the shadow. Oh, making sure that I get the shadow. Oh, I did. See the selection marquee, the marching ants? So I'll just add a little layer mask at the bottom of the layers panel. That's a little mask icon. Boom, I've got it. But I don't really like the way they're blending, right? So I can go in here and like maybe I don't like this ice either. So what if we double click on this? It opens it in Camera Raw. I zoom in here and then I go over here and I just grab, let's say, my healing tool. And I say, yeah, could you please just get rid of that? Go away. Bye-bye. Gotta go. Oh, that too. Yeah, okay, that looks good. Oh, what's that? Ah, all right. And then we zoom out, and then I say, but you know what else? I think it should be a little darker. So this is a pretty delicate file in that it's a long distance for that gradient, and it's only passing through a few colors, meaning that it's going from a pretty light blue to white. It's not going from like black through dark blue, through medium blue. So if I had brought this over as a pixel-based file, if I just said edit in Photoshop and opened it up and it was pixels, and I made a big adjustment, like if I took that exposure down or something, you might actually see banding. But because I have placed it by saying edit in Photoshop as smart objects, this is a copy of the raw file, so I've got all that raw goodness. So when I hit OK, it will re-render it from the raw file. I could go back in there a million times. I could go in here and say, you know what? It just looks a little too blue. I want to make it more yellow. And if I don't like it, I can even use Command Z to undo it. And it will undo the changes that I've made to it in Camera Raw. So how does it look up there? It's fine, all right? You guys get the concept of it, right? Pretty darn cool. All right, so let's close this. And I think can I do one more? I can do one more. Like, see, it just makes a big difference, right? Like, if you combine those two images, like, I think this image is a lot better than that image. And I saw that background and I was like, there's no way I can get to a position to shoot up at that in the amount of time I have. So I'm just gonna take that picture and then I'm gonna try to take another picture of just kind of the blurred soft one, and then I'm just gonna put them together. And it's so easy. I just use the pen tool across the thing. So easy. Okay, but we'll do this one because this is an impossible shot to get in Iceland. So here are my 3 layers. So you've got this geyser, or do you guys call them geysers as well? Geysers. You got a geyser. They call them geysers there, which isn't really nice yeah. And in this image, I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to take a picture because people can walk all the way around it. So there's benches and all this stuff. And then I thought, well, then I'm just going to take another picture of just the water, and then I'll just put some steam in there, and we can come up with this picture right here. So easy. Watch. Go to Grid, right-click, Edit in, and then open a Smart Object Layers in Photoshop. It'll open them up. There it is. Okay, so what do we have here? 1, 2, 3. There they are. So let's start with this on the bottom. Okay, so we've got this one on the bottom, and I'm going to just go free transform and just make it a little bit smaller because I think it's going to be a little bit too big. So let's make that a little bit smaller. Here's the great thing: I can do free transform. Watch this. Ooh, how small can we make it? And if I change my mind, look at this. All the full res information is there because it's a smart object. So under the hood, we're keeping track of all the information. You can resize it, you can distort it, you can do whatever you want. Okay, then we've got the water. So let's grab that. We can put that on top. What do we have here? Let's zoom out, free transform. Let's make this a little bigger. That looks good. We'll bring it down to about there. Okay, now sometimes, like in this case, because I'm not sure where I want to paint it in, we could either put this on top, or we can leave it down there and I can just add a black mask. So when I option click on the layer mask icon, instead of giving me a white mask, it gives me a black mask. That'd be alt click for the Windows folks. Grab my paintbrush, B for brush, get a large brush here. I'm just holding down Control and Option. On Windows, this is actually a weird shortcut. It is a right click and Alt, I think. I'd have to look on my blog, sorry. All right, but I want to make sure that I'm painting with white. We know that white is going to show the information on that layer. So I am painting in, right? I'm painting in all of this water layer. So I'm showing that water layer. That's gonna look good. So now it looks like it belongs right in there. If it didn't, I could go in, double click on it, brings it up in Camera Raw. I could change the color balance, right? If the colors didn't match or something. Doesn't look good, but undo that. And then we have all of this is actually taken in a little bit different location where there was this bubbling mud pot. But again, free transform it, bring that over, a little further, bloop. All right, add our layer mask. I can just add it we don't have to add it in black if you don't want to, but now I have to paint with black because my mask is white and I want to hide it, right? I want to hide all this. So we could just hide this. And then we could even unlink the mask from the layer, right? That's the little icon in between, that little link icon. Grab the photograph, and then we can just move that around if we want to. And of course, you can also paint on the mask like with 50%. So if you have the brush tool selected and you tap like 5, you get 50%. If you tap 6, you get 60%. If you tap quite quickly, like 6, you get 66%. But if you tap 6, it will reformat your hard drive, so be careful. Okay, so I'm just gonna paint at like 30%. I'll hit the X key and just bring some of this down here. I'm glad you all thought that was funny. Okay, and then I don't want that to show, so I'll just paint that out right there. But you can see I love Photoshop. It's like my little baby, and people are like, oh, I don't want to go to Photoshop. I love going to Photoshop. So I hope you will enjoy Photoshop. I know that some of you if you wanted to get more into like the surreal composites, there's a movie on how I did this image. There's a movie on how I did this image. All you need to do is go to my blog, and actually it's even under video tutorials. You can just go to Photoshop, and there's a bunch of stuff from Max. Yeah, this stuff at the top, creating compelling composites. That's the link you want. Because, you know, I mean, we've covered a ton today. Probably your heads are pretty full. At least I hope so. I hope we got some new information to you guys. And but there's just not time to do everything in one day. If there was, I'd be really depressed, since it probably took me 20 years to learn all of this. So you're welcome.